I am going to cover some of the things that we've built into iPoll. So we have all of our IT infrastructure is done in-house. And it allows us to make really targeted tools for public opinion research specifically, and for our community of users. Many of the tools are at user request. So if there's some feature that you are not seeing that you would really like to see in iPoll, there are feedback buttons all over iPoll itself. Use them. We do pay attention to the feedback that we get, and we incorporate it into our technological planning. Also, I'm not really going to talk about the content of the archive in my presentation, but it's going to be fairly short. So if you have time at the end, there's going to be time for questions. If you have questions about content, I'm happy to talk about what we have in the archive. I always want to talk about what we have, but today it's going to be about how to use it and really learning about the things that people aren't as aware of. Some of you are going to know about some of them, maybe not about all of them, but it'll be a good review in any case. So I'm going to share my screen for just a moment to give you a slide to tell you what we're going to talk about, mostly to remind me. Oh, are you seeing a slide or are you seeing iPoll? Anybody? Rachel?
We are seeing a slide, Kathleen.
Oh, excellent. That's good to hear. So, um, power search. So there are a lot of ways to search. People tend to use keywords and very little else, maybe organizations or dates, but there are some options for searching that are much more powerful, and I want you to learn a little about those. Custom crosstab tool. We have a fabulous tool for those of you who maybe you don't have statistical software on your computer or your home computer, or maybe you are serving students if you are a librarian who's supporting students who may not have access to statistical software. People are often just looking for a crosstab or a little beyond a crosstab, the standard crosstabs. So we have an advanced tool that you could use to do that very basic crosstabbing, and it is quite handy, but very little used. So I'm hoping this will spark interest. Customizing trends. People look at trends, but I want to make sure people are aware that you can make some changes to the trends and make them fit whatever your needs are. Folders. This is probably the part that I'm most excited about talking about. The folder functionality is actually really interesting and valuable, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how they can get the most out of the folders for organization of their own research and for sharing with others. And finally, I'm just going to show you a few specialized guides we have outside of iPoll that will give you some information about public opinion research, the process, and how you might deal with particular questions or issues that come up in questions we get a lot. So we want to be able to provide some framework for people, and we have a few resources on the site. So there's my overview. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share again, and I'm going to share my screen. Now, are you seeing iPoll?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Excellent. So I'm going to go over a couple of the things on this page. Everything that's on this page is also going to be available as a filter on your results page. So you will see all of these things again, and some of them I'm going to talk about then. Keywords is straightforward enough. Interview dates, I think everybody uses that. I'm going to talk about the exclude options when we get inside the application. Organizations or researchers is straightforward. Topics, I think people know that we have topics assigned. The only thing I could recommend there is do take advantage of the Boolean operator there. It really can narrow quite a bit if you use two topics at once. The health categories. I love the health categories. They make me really, really happy. I wish I could do them for all areas. It's about uh, 10,000, I'm sorry, excuse me, 100,000 questions that we have in this section, things that are related to health in the broadest meaning. And they are tagged with much more granular topics than we do the general topic assignments. So this means that when you have a tricky question, a tricky area like access to care, there are so many ways that these questions are asked. And it can be very difficult to make sure you're getting all the questions you want to get because you have to imagine all the different ways somebody might have asked it. These topics you can see get down to appointment availability, financial barriers to care, source of care, etc. So there's some really good granular topics there that are valuable when searching, and I recommend if you have anything that you're looking at that touches on health, whether it's obviously health, insurance, COVID, or also social determinants of health, things related to health issues, or things around gun violence. All of these things, they have these assignments, and I recommend you use them. Countries is too straightforward to point out, except that we do have a multi-country tag. And that is, I will confess, not as used as it should be, because some of the older data, when surveys went in as individual surveys, even though they were part of a larger project, it doesn't show up, but we are slowly catching all of those older ones. And of course, some of the big things like Pew Global, the Transatlantic Trends series, are already marked as multi-country. So if you're looking for that country comparison, that is an option here. Another thing people sometimes look for in terms of geography is state level data. And I've sometimes surprised how frequently they're looking for a state, not necessarily the state. They're not looking for a particular state. What they're looking for is data about attitudes about governors, or some other thing that they could work. They need the state level data, but they aren't necessarily targeting a particular state. You can target all states. Oh, if you click on state and not country, you can do a select all, and that will give you only state level data, but it will go across states. And finally, the sample type. Sample type is really helpful because although most of the data in the collection is general population, right? It's a national adult population. That's the biggest chunk. But there are a lot of others. Some of them are huge. Registered voter polls, tons of registered voter polls, or likely voter polls. But also some quite small categories where the target population is particularly valuable. Caregivers. That's a really important area. We don't have that many, but we want to make it easy for people to find them. We have an awful lot of surveys that focus on race, ethnicity, populations defined by race, ethnicity, and peoplehood. We also have a lot of surveys where those are over samples. They are also targeted here because sometimes it can be very difficult to find a survey question that you want asked of a large enough population, subpopulation, to do any analysis. And so having that noted, even if it's just an oversample, allows you to at least get the data set and do the run, even if it isn't in at the question level of that population. I'll give you a little more information about certain aspects of that later. So sample type is very useful. Go back up here, and I'm going to put in immigration. So the first thing you might not notice, but it's quite helpful, is that it offers you this possibility. Did you mean topic immigration? Um, we don't have at the source, we don't have a million variant keywords that we're using to send you results that are sort of like what you looked for. So topics is really how we make sure that people will get things that don't use the word that they looked for. that is on the topic of the same area. So if you're looking for immigration, you're not going to get questions that mention refugees. But if you use topic immigration, you will. So we suggest topic. We also suggest if you put in like a country name and what you were really looking for is data from that country, it will make that suggestion. So if you, because people are really used to Google, they're really used to just putting something. Oh God, now I'm going to have to start saying they're really used to ChatGPT. I could cry. Okay, they're used to putting something into a bar and getting everything back. We are not structured that way, and people who want a targeted traditional search don't want it that way. So this is just our way of giving a reminder that there may be a way of searching that you might be looking for. It's a little different. As I said, everything on this side um, is is available that was on the first slide, right, on the first page. Note that if you have, now I don't have one. There's one. Ooh, what happened? My screen got wide, right? Or my bar here got wide. It is a responsive application. So that's great if you're using a tablet. It can be really annoying if you are like me using a laptop that's not that big and I don't want to devote all this space. Sometimes it can get really large. So just know if you want to close those up, it's responding to the length of some of those entries. If you close them up, it will narrow to a set size. So that's a little handy trick that not everyone is aware of. Filtering here, you can do a little bit more even than on the search page. You can search by what's in it, right? You can get only those things with data sets, only those things with particular format of data set. Experimental treatment and open-ended questions were in the excludes on the main page, and they're on the excludes here as well. Why? Because we have certain studies in the collection, the test collection, particularly the time-sharing experiments in social sciences. The test collection consists of data sets, but also questions entered as if it were running the experiment, essentially. So it's there, all the questions are run by the different experimental groups. A description of that treatment is included in the question. In the subpopulation notes, it'll give you who was asked this in the context of this larger experiment, so you can really understand how the experiment worked. That's fantastic. Problem with it is, if you're just looking for a national adult population or, a general sort of public opinion poll and you're looking for what people are thinking, you're going to get potentially 7, 8 versions of the same question because it's describing those different experimental groups and showing the results from those different groups, one right after the other. It can clutter up your space. So you can exclude those if you're not interested in them, or you can focus on them. You could say, I really want to look at experiments and see what I can find here. Same thing with open-ended questions. There are people who want to look at open-ended questions for various reasons, but because the keyword search, searches the response categories as well as the question text, that means if you have a response like, to what is the most important issue facing the country, and 1% of people always say the federal budget deficit, you will get federal budget, you'll get that question back if you put in federal budget deficit. So you might not want to look at that 100 times. You want to just look at those questions that are specifically about the deficit, then you can clear them away using the excludes. There is another option here. There's 2 more options. One is subnational, same reason. If you want national polls, you want to be able to filter out those state polls so that they aren't cluttering up your space. But the one I really love is my workspace. So if you have saved a question to one of your folders in your workspace, which we're going to go look at right now, actually, you can filter them out. And this is great if you are doing a review of a topic and you're throwing in keywords and you're collecting questions and you're throwing them into a folder, and then you put in a new keyword and the new keyword pulls up some different questions that the other keyword didn't, but it also pulls up questions that it already did, and you're seeing a lot of the stuff you're going through, you've already seen it. You can just get rid of that. You can hide it. And it saves me an enormous amount of time, and I hope it will save you some time too. So let's talk about this workplace. Here we go. My workspace. So you have to be logged in. I hope you always work logged in. It's a much better experience. And if you go to my workspace, you are going to see all the questions and trends and studies that you have put there. Well, how do you put them there? Easily enough. On the side of your screen, you can add a question. Study, same thing. Trends, same thing. Always just a matter of just clicking and adding. If you want to add everything on the screen at once, you could do a select all and then add it to your workspace. Now, it will throw anything new into the top level of your workspace. We do not yet have the capacity to say, I want to put it in this particular folder until it gets into the workspace. I'd like it in the future, but it's still pretty powerful once you get here. So you can make as many folders and subfolders as you wish. I have assorted political, funny questions, superstitions, you name it. You can make a nice folder and just throw, I don't know why that one's going to go in there, but you just can just drag and drop. Now, one thing that happens is you get a really, really long set of questions that you've added all at once, and then you want to organize them, and it can be annoying to try to drag and drop because there's just so much on the screen. So what you can do there is just right click, choose move, and then choose whichever folder you want to put it in. I guess I just said the secret to a successful marriage is marijuana, which is not what I intended to imply, but I put it in that folder anyway, just to put it in a folder for you. So that is handy. It's also handy to be able to share folders. So if you are working with anyone else who uses iPoll, it doesn't have to be at your institution. It could be a collaboration that you're doing with someone elsewhere. As long as they have a Roper account, you can share your folders with them. And it's really, it's like Google Drive. It's super easy. You just right click, share, and then invite someone to be part of it. And I'm going to invite my colleague, Jean, who designed this system, and I'm adding him right now. And now I can say, actually, I want him to be able to edit. I want him to be able to add things to this folder. Add privilege, role updated, done. So the one thing I'm going to warn you about here is that the first time I tried to do this with Gene, it didn't work because he's not in Roper under his Cornell email. He's in Roper under his alias. And this is very common at universities. People can set up many different versions of their email address. So sometimes you don't know who you're trying to get in there. You don't know what their actual email address that they have an account with in iPoll. So if you're having that issue, the easiest thing to do is to go up My Account, Settings, and you'll see there's an account ID. It's absolutely unique. So if you want to share with somebody, just have them copied, and send it to you. You put that in. Now you have shared folders. And of course, you can remove somebody from a shared folder at any time. While we're here, note that you can do a little bit of personalization and preference here. I always want to see the full range of search filters. I never just want that one bar. So instead of having to click it open every time, I can choose to have it set that way. The custom crosstabs, which I'm about to show you. If you want to always use the default mode, you can default that way too. We are open to suggestions of other things people might want to do to organize their space in different ways and set their preferences. So that is also available here. Under that My Account, technically this isn't part of my workspace, but I think of it as part of it. The activity log. Activity log is breadcrumbs of everything you've done. So you can see that I was prepping for this. So I was throwing in immigration. But if you throw in immigration over and over again, it's going to look very silly. But if you're doing an elaborate search, you've searched on a particular organization for a particular time frame with a particular word, you don't want to have to re-enter that necessarily. When you come back and it's time to look at those things again, you can rerun the search right here. You can also backtrack to see what you've looked at. So what questions have I viewed? What studies have I viewed? What trends have I viewed? And that's really helpful and I don't know if it happens to you, it certainly happens to me. I remember that I saw something. I saw something. What was that question I saw? I think I saw the thing I needed, didn't know I needed it until later. It'll help you backtrack. It's really handy. So I'm go back to my search history and run that search again. And here we are, same search. One thing I want to point out is that you can change up your searching in this bar. So if you decide that you do want refugees specifically, you can change here. You don't have to go back out and go back in again. And frankly, I never do. I stay in this area all the time. As you add things like crosstabs, you'll see it adds up here. You can get rid of those filters. So you can move back and forth between, well, I want to look at all organizations. No, just this organization. Okay, take that back off. Well, I want to do the same search with a different word added. But I want to keep all of these organizations that I found that I targeted. You can do a lot by just never leaving this screen once you've gotten in. So I highly recommend that. I'm going to go back to immigration because that's the one I looked at. It was a nice, simple survey that I want to look at. So now those crosstabs, you know they're here because there's this and there's also this. Right now, in the future, there will be some custom crosstab studies that are not necessarily in with the demographic crosstabs that we provide in iPoll. Why? Because when we do the demographic sample, we have to match every variable to the question. Whereas the custom crosstab tool could be used even if we didn't have any questions in the iPoll database because it works off of the data set. So we have the opportunity to add a lot more things to the custom crosstabs. That hasn't quite happened yet, but it will be happening in the future. So I know that I want to look at this particular question in the custom crosstabs tool. So this is the basic mode, and it works sort of as you might expect. You can pick a row. You can pick a column like gender. There's your response categories. There's response categories. Scroll down and you get your weighted percentages and your frequencies, and you can grab that as an Excel. So this is handy. You can do, any two questions. So you're not limited to the things that we might put into the demographic crosstab tables that are available on the questions where we have them. But it's limited. It's two things. If you go back up here, there is an advanced mode. Oh, that's a particular. So you always want to read the usage notes that they did not weight this particular survey, which is interesting. But for weighted surveys, the weight will be applied. We only do it when we can apply a weight that matches the weight that was used for the questions in iPoll. So it will be that largest population, national adult population. Some organizations will sometimes have recommendations that you use different weights when looking at different subpopulations. And we try to make sure that's visible in the usage note to encourage you to use the best weight for your purposes, which may mean going out of this tool. You don't have the ability yet to change up weights within this tool, but you will get weighted results. So here you have everything laid out, and you can do your question, whichever question we want here. What do we want? This one, why not? Over here is a column. And then as a row, let's say we want to do education and gender. And now you have all of these together in a chart that you can grab easily. Not particularly an interesting chart in this case, but it does mean that you can stack your analysis. You can also look frequencies is the default. I think it should be percentages, but still frequencies. You can flip it up. You can actually change what you're getting out of it. So there's a table. There's also like a heat map option. So you can play around with how those are designed, and you can do an exportable TSV, so tab delineated file to grab that and then put it into another sort of program. Okay. So that is custom crosstabs. Now, I want to, let me make sure I'm on target here. What am I doing? Custom crosstab folders. Okay. Oh, trends. I knew I was missing something. I was going to jump into the other items, but trends come first. So I'm just going to do immigration one more time. It's tired, I guess, today. Going very slowly. There we go. Thank you. Trends. So something that people are often looking for is the trend with the most questions in it. So you can do that. You can do the oldest trend, the newest trend, and yes, you can do most questions. And you can see that this one is 93 questions. This one is 62, and they go down. So that is nice to know as you're going in and get a sense of what you're looking at. Look at that big gap period when he was not handling immigration. So this is your standard chart, and it may be that you just want to look at the first term, right? You don't actually want to have this big gap period in the new. You really just want to look at this. You can just select, if I can do this, there we go. Select, zoom. That's perfect chart. And then you can grab that chart instead of the full one. And if you want to reset, just up here. You can also make some other changes. This is a survey that was conducted by a lot of different survey organizations. This question was conducted by a lot of different survey organizations. So they fielded it, the Gallup did it, Quinnipiac did it, SSRS did it. So when if you want to look at just one organization's results, you can do that. You can do the same thing with interview mode. And that can be really valuable because it gives you a really quick ability to see, oh, these are, there is a difference between these two methods. It's obvious. Usually it's not obvious, but every once in a while it will be. And it is nice to double check, even just as a quick visual overview. You can also change the time frame in here. You can apply, you can clear, and you can download that file. So I'm just going to quickly download that file and hope that this will show. Rachel, are you seeing the Excel spreadsheet?
No,
Oh, I
no,
was
we're still
afraid of
seeing
that.
iPoll.
Okay, well, I can describe the Excel spreadsheet. That'll be good enough, I think, in this case. See, so the spreadsheet will give you all of the original questions We don't do much harmonization really. It's primarily looking at just entry differences as compared to actual wording differences. But sometimes there might be a tiny difference. And for example, up here we indicate that. How do you approve of how he's handling the issue of immigration versus handling immigration? I don't think there's really a difference there, but you might want to know who did it which way. That original question wording for each instance will be in that spreadsheet, along with any normalization. Again, normalization on response categories is pretty much just the difference between strongly approve and approve strongly. It's just how they wrote it when they put out the press release. But you will at least be able to see all of that and make sure that we didn't do anything that you think is beyond the pale. I doubt we would, but you never know. And it also gives you the study and the number, so you can go directly and get the data set. However, you can also navigate from the trend to iPoll. So if you're looking at these questions and you want to know more about, maybe there's an outlier there, and you're like, who's that? What were they doing? You can click anywhere on the trend and pop right out and get that information. And I think that's really helpful. That was not in the first release, and it was a nice addition afterward. And note, you can grab the image here in a multitude of formats. So now I'm going to go back to the search. Actually, I'm just going to go to the main page here and throw an atom bomb. So one thing I do all day long, I think, is switch from the newest to the oldest first. Another like small thing, but some people aren't aware that you can do it. And if you're looking for the early data, I do this all the time. I don't frame it necessarily. I just throw it in, flip it to the oldest, and look at the oldest stuff. As all of you likely know, polling has changed methodologies a lot over the years, a lot, a lot. And those early years were the way they did surveys was very, very different. It was in-person quota polls. And it's important to understand how they were done if you are looking to work with that data. So one thing, grab this question. This is a Gallup poll. And if you look at the downloads, you'll see that we have downloads from the work of Adam Berinsky and Eric Schickler, who reweighted the Gallup polls. I did some cleaning on the NORC and Roper, but the differences in those, the issues with those are less systematic than they were with Gallup. And it's underrepresentation of certain groups. Adam and Eric reweighted them, created new data sets to allow you to get a better representation of the actual national adult population. So that's really useful. Please be aware that those are there. That's the only time I'm really going to touch on content, because it also is a little bit navigation. But in addition to that, if you want to understand a bit more about that framework, we have this historical methods tab up on anything before 1970. And it will tell you a little bit, broad strokes, a little introduction to early polling methods. It will also give, for those organizations that we have a particular write-up where we know a bit more, NORC, Roper, Minnesota poll, Gallup, and it'll give you a little description of some of the most important things that we know about their work and the types of methods they used. And in the case of Gallup, Roper, and NORC, we also had some information about the demographic categories, the questions that were asked each time, how they were asked. This is really important because it can be very hard to make sense out of some of the things like the economic categories that were very different from anything we use today. There's information in here about when they switched across different surveys, when they made changes to their demographic categories, and also which ones you can find where and what they might mean. So that is an important guide. And now I'm actually going to go actually out of iPoll altogether. And let's see if this works. Election polling overview, Rachel?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So as long as I stay in the browser, I'm fine. So as I said, we have a few places. The historical methods is one piece where we're trying to give you some context and help you use the data in the most responsible way, or help the users use the data in the most responsible way for those of you who are assisting other researchers. Election polling is complicated. There's a lot of different types of surveys that are done to analyze elections. There's media polls before the election. There's the ANES, where they do surveys before and after the election to do comparative work. There's exit polls. There are different types of exit polls that use different methodologies now. There are many things that many different ways that you might want to use these data, and they're fit for use, right? There's certain things you can get out of a pre and post that you're not going to get out of a media poll, and that will not provide the same information that you're getting out of an exit poll, but an exit poll also has its limitations. There's all sorts of different reasons why you might want to use one or the other. We try to lay these out here. We try to give you that information. Just a little overview, and it's great for students. I have this thing I want to research about. I don't know which is the best option. It may be the CES, that is described in here too. It's a lot of material covered. One thing that goes into a lot of detail is this exit poll demographic spreadsheet. So in addition to the exits that we tend to think of, the Edison exits and plug, we'll be having an event next month with Murray Edelman and Jelensky, two giants in the polling world, for their work. Murray's with Warren Matofsky in developing the techniques of exit polling and for conducting the exit polls for the largest media consortium. But there were years before the consortium existed where individual organizations were running their exit polls on their own. NBC, ABC, CBS, LA Times. And there's also now Votecast, which is another exit poll project. And you can look through these polls and determine easily which demographics are available in which polls in which years. And these are used for demographics more than anything else, right? And so much of the election polling data is being analyzed based on demographics. So it's really helpful to know that, no, you are not going to be able to find the born-again evangelical variable in the 1978 CBS, but you will in the 1980. And you can look at them individually, or you can look across. And there's some information too on some of the topics that are addressed in these. So I think this is super useful, and I don't know that many people know that it's there. So I highly recommend you use it if you have those types of questions. Similarly, we did some work to make it easier to do research in Black American public opinion. The number of surveys available from the early years of survey research on, and even in an early being quite a long stretch, in fact, and still not as much polling as one would hope of the Black American population. But we do give some information here about the history of it and some notable samples. So if you're really looking for those samples, you can also use sample type over on that in the search. But there's a list of some of the polls of Black Americans. But you can also get this, finding Black American samples. So that's not the only way you could go about it. You don't have to get a survey that's necessarily of Black American samples. You just need enough Black Americans in your sample to do some analysis in some cases. So we review here sample size on surveys because in the very early days it was very large and then it shrunk down and then it's gotten a little bigger. And now that there's a lot of online polls that are huge, they're massive. So if your poll is big enough, you're likely going to have a big enough sample. So that's one way to think about where you're looking. Um, because over time, a lot of the time that polling was producing surveys of general adult populations, it was right on the line. It was maybe 1,000, 1,200 people. And then sometimes the Black American population was harder to get as respondents. And so you get under 100 people, even though as part of the population should have been a little higher. So this lists out the first survey from any particular organization, just looking at the big players, the main organizations that were doing survey research by decade. So the first one in the 60s, the first one in the 70s, the first one in the 80s, just to give a sort of thumbnail of how many people were they getting? Are they getting a population big enough for you to analyze? And also, how did they categorize? What was the question that was asked? Did they even ask a question? In some cases, they were not, right? And in the earliest days, it was not the respondent, but the interviewer who was categorizing people. So it's important to know that for one, but it's also important to be able to compare that there's going to be variation when you see some of the other ways that race and ethnicity are broken down in later polling. So that, my friends, is my overview. Those are all the things I would most like you to know that I don't know that you do. And I am 100% open to questions. And for the questions, you don't need to limit yourself to tools and whatnot. I'm happy to answer questions about content surveys and whatnot. But does and if anyone has suggestions of things they want to see in the future, we are open to those too. So stop the share so I can see the Q&A. There are no open questions. Does that mean there are no questions or no one's written anything down? So I can, because you all came on today. Oh, how you get to the info. Yes, absolutely. Somebody's asking, how do you get to the info on Black Americans? It's a slightly annoying, a slightly annoying set of buttons to click. So I did not do it. But if you go to data highlights, there's featured projects, and Black America and Public Opinion is one of those projects. So if you click in here, there's going to be information, historical questions. So the survey is related to Black Americans and race relations and historical. So this is more recent. These are historical. Those two sections are about attitudes about. So national adult populations, sometimes even white populations, attitudes about Black Americans, and the other sections, the researching Black opinion and the finding Black samples, are about finding Black respondents. Yes, citations can 100% be generated. Let me just go back. So there's citation options everywhere. We really want people to cite data. So you can cite the question. You can grab it here. You can choose your citation style and grab the information, copy paste or export to file. If you're using a data set and not just a single question that you are referencing, you can also grab that. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong one. On Cite Study. And again, big long list. Citation text will be there from whatever you pick. And you can copy it to the clipboard or export to the file. We also have citations at the bottom of the screen for trends. Trends are really tricky because they can include many, many, many different survey organizations, and there isn't really a set standard for what those look like. So there's just an option there where you can just copy and paste a citation from the bottom of the screen. So are there other questions? Don't see any other questions yet. I'm going to give you a moment, but as I said, because you showed up, I'm going to give you a coming attractions. So I always want to give a little extra something special to the people who came um, to the events, webinars, anything. So coming up soon, we have a lot of new data providers coming on. When I first started here, uh, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we had about 18 regularly contributing data providers. I did a count yesterday because I was curious where we gotten. Now we've got 70 plus. So a lot of new data coming in. We will be focusing in the next newsletter on data from Africa, both the historical collection and new data we have coming in. So that's kind of exciting. In terms of IT tools, I hate to tell people about coming IT tools because, or tweaks and changes and additions because you never know with IT. Sometimes things take longer than you hoped, but they will eventually show up. And one of those that I am very much looking forward to is the ability to set sample size in your searching and filtering so that you can really say, I need a minimum of this many people. If you're doing certain types of analysis, you know that you need a big enough survey for that particular subpopulation they're looking for, et cetera. So that is something that will be coming. I'm not sure exactly when it's coming, but that's in the hopper from IT. Anybody else have anything else I can help you with today? Again, feedback. Every screen has feedback. Feel free to use it. That's if there's data that you'd like us to try to get that isn't available, suggest possible data providers, suggest tools, suggest tweaks, personalization options, anything you want. Let us know. Not promising we can do it, but we will definitely try. And we also are happy to answer questions. We get a lot of individual questions about particular data. Is there any data on this topic? I don't understand what's going on with this data set. We're happy to answer user questions, and you will find the data services email all over the website. Use it. We're happy to help.
Thank you, Kathleen. There is one thing that you did mention that we do have a Roper Roundtable coming up. You mentioned that, and I just wanted to give a little more information on that. That is going to be on October 29th. There's information on the website. If you go to the Roper website, you'll be able to sign up for that. And that is a webinar that's going to be, as you mentioned, with Murray Edelman and Joe Lenski, discussing the evolution of election night analysis and projections. So we would love to have you join us for that as well.
Should be a good one.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and have a good afternoon.